Hey guys, Paul here from familywheels.ca with another car review for your growing family. And we've taken a rather long road trip with the family this week, over 1,000 kilometers, to come out to the west coast here, rainy Vancouver Island, and visit my parents in the home that I grew up in. Now, it's just outside of Victoria on some rather windy roads, and it's these windy roads that I've grown to love driving on as a kid, you know, just soaking up the corners, having some fun. Now, traditionally speaking, a luxury SUV might not be your first choice for playing around in corners like that, but we've been in luxury SUVs for a few weeks now here on the program. I have to say that they're really becoming very performance oriented and a lot of fun to get around in. And Lincoln, with its new MKX, which is what we have here this week, has done just that. They've got a lot more out of their 2016 MKX. It's been completely redesigned for 2016. The company has had this in their lineup since 2007, but this is the first complete redesign that we've seen. Now, it has traditionally been a bestseller for the company, although the smaller MKC crossover vehicle has taken that top spot, but Lincoln still sees this as a really important vehicle to have in its lineup. It's actually based on the Ford Edge platform, shares a lot of the same technology in its platform and in the new 2.7-liter EcoBoost engine that's available to you as well. But other than that, we've got different suspension, a better interior, different exterior styling as well, and having spent over 1,000 kilometers now in this vehicle, I have to say that I'm really impressed with how it drives and how it does soak up those corners. So let's see just how much we can pack into this vehicle this week for our road trip. So stick around, the new 2016 MKX from Lincoln this week here on Family Wheels. You know, I always see the size of these bags. Well, I have to say that I was really pleased to see the MKX was getting a redesign for 2016, because the previous version of the MKX I thought looked a little bit ridiculous, to be honest. It had this great big bulbous nose on the front of it that seemed to be trying a little bit too hard. It kind of looked like something that the Joker would drive around in a Batman movie, as opposed to a proper luxury SUV. Here on this new version, it does hold on to some of those previous notes in terms of style, but it's a lot more, subtle. It's not as much of a punch in the face, and a bit more of a refined look, in my opinion. And when I first stepped inside the MKX, I was equally impressed with how things looked in here. It's a very sleek interior, and does look like it kind of has this fighter jet style center console. There are some bins down low here that I thought were pretty clever under the center console for storing things away. When you start to look a little bit more closely though, some of the switchware feels kind of cheap. It doesn't tend to live up to vehicles in this luxury SUV or crossover segment. And some of the plastics as well, around the dash, around the door panels, that sort of thing. When you compare that to the Audi Q7 I was in a couple weeks ago, or the Mercedes GLE that I was in this past week, it just doesn't quite match up. However, you are getting a slightly cheaper vehicle here with the MKX. I mean, for example, you can get into one starting at around $45,000. Here in Canada, that's including all-wheel drive, by the way. In the States, the base model of the MKX has front-wheel drive on board, but here in Canada, regardless of the trim you get, you're getting all-wheel drive. But this Tester that I'm in here today is going to cost about $65,000. That matches up with the base price of a Q7 or a GLE or a lot of other vehicles that are in this luxury SUV segment. So you're getting a fair bit of competition here at this point, and I just thought the interior didn't quite match up as well as I would have thought in terms of, the feel of the switchware and perhaps some of the general build quality. But what I'm really liking about the MKX is the general drive feel. If we look at this from the outside, it doesn't have a heck of a lot of ground clearance. It's more of a crossover than a full-blown, off-roading SUV. So it could go on the occasional little back road or certainly gravel roads without problem, but hardcore backcountry access, this isn't going to be the vehicle for you. But it means that even though this has fairly soft, plush suspension on board, that is not bobbing and weaving uncontrollably through these windy British Columbia side roads. And then if we look at the engines that are available to you, the base model MKX is going to give you a 3.7-liter V6. Now what's interesting is that as you climb up in price, generally speaking, you're going to get a larger engine in a lot of vehicles. Not so here in the MKX. In fact, Lincoln is launching what it hopes to become a flagship engine for the brand, which is a 2.7 liter EcoBoost twin turbocharged engine. And that's going to cost you about $8,000 more on top of the base price. It's going to give you a bit more power, a bit more get up and go, but also be a bit more fuel efficient. And it is a lot of fun. It's a great little engine, and not so different to the 2.7 liter EcoBoost that was on board that Ford F-150 pickup truck I tested for you last summer that I absolutely loved. What a great engine that was. It could tow really capably. It was still really sporty and amazingly efficient in a truck of that size. Now what they've done is they've tweaked it a little bit, giving you even more horsepower, even more torque, and made it an incredibly responsive engine here for the MKX. However, I've averaged now over 1,000 kilometers worth of driving, about 10.9, 11.1 liters per 100 kilometers, which is not that great in a car of this size. So that's the trade-off. You get a very responsive engine, but fuel economy isn't anything to write home about. However, the $65,000 price tag on this tester we've got here isn't leaving many stones unturned in terms of what you'd be looking for in a luxury vehicle. All kinds of packages on board here today, including a driver assist package, which gives you lane keeping assist technology, adaptive cruise control, collision avoidance software. We have the technology package, which is giving you this pretty impressive 360-degree park camera that allows you to really park in tight parking garages and that sort of thing. We have parking sensors up front and in the rear bumper. We have Park Assist, which is Ford's incredible system of allowing you to basically push a button and the car will do all the heavy lifting when you're parallel parking in a busy downtown street. Also included on this tester, we've got an amazing Rebel sound system. Raffi has never sounded so good, let me tell you. We've got 22-way adjustable front seats and a massage feature as well. But the massage features kind of come up short in my mind. I kind of feel like I'm being pummeled as opposed to massaged gently by a master Swede. I don't know if that's too much information, but some other vehicles have certainly made a better job of their massaging feature on their luxury line of vehicles. Now, regardless of the trim that you get on the MKX, you're going to be getting this Ford-based infotainment system, which I've struggled with in the past, and it continues to be the case here in the MKX, unfortunately. What I like about this system is the home screen, which gives you a lot of information in a one-stop shop. A lot of other systems don't have this, and I think that's a shortcoming. But here in the MKX, we've got phone information, navigation information, entertainment, and climate information all in one screen, and that's excellent. However, once you go to dive into it and actually use it, the touchscreen isn't particularly sensitive, so you really have to jab at it in order for it to pick up your inputs. And then it's kind of laggy as well. It takes a couple of seconds to think about some of your requests. If you want to use the hands-free function, it's equally frustrating. Let's use navigation, for example. In some vehicles, all you have to do is push this little hands-free button on the steering wheel and say, navigate to 1234 Main Street, Vancouver, British Columbia. It's a one-step thing. It'll get you right to where you need to go. It understands what you're saying, and it puts all that information on the screen right away. Here in the Lincoln, there are so many steps that you have to go through. It often mishears you, so you have to re-enter that information. I've found that actually in the end, I've wound up using my phone a lot of the time and Google Maps on this just because I've gotten so frustrated with the infotainment system and the navigation here in the MKX. Okay, so let's walk around the MKX here, show you some of the things that I'm loving and some of the things that I'm not so crazy about. First up, I've been on the highway mostly on this trip, and it means that I've been in cruise control a lot of the time. There's adaptive cruise control on this particular trim, and it's a great idea. Adaptive cruise control will brake for you, accelerate for you, and keep the distances appropriate in between you and the vehicle in front of you. I love that idea, but the adaptive cruise control here in the MKX is fairly jerky, and I'm finding that it would brake quite a bit on me fairly suddenly as I was approaching another vehicle. It's not as smooth as some systems that I've seen out there. And another irritating thing about the adaptive cruise control here in the MKX is that it will actually sense a vehicle in the lane next to you and start to brake on occasion. That happened to me probably about 24 times here on this trip, and that's an annoying little feature here on this vehicle. Another thing that I found rather bothersome had to do with the navigation system. There have been quite a few times where I've found the navigation software, the maps on board, are out of date, showing old highways and old roads, and so I'm actually driving off in a farmer's field where a new road has been put in place. And then on top of that, there's this should be helpful little icon in the instrument cluster here in front of me as a driver, and it'll show me what the current speed zone is, or speed limit is in the area. And while that sounds great, those are often out of date as well. So in British Columbia, for example, a lot of the highway speed limits have just been changed, and this system is not yet up to date with that information, and so it's kind of defeating the purpose and just a little bit irritating. From the back seat, the seats are fairly comfortable back there as well, but if you've got a tall driver up front, you're going to find that for a full-size adult, it's going to be fairly pinched back here. I've got just enough leg room. It'll be fine for trips around town, but long road trips, I'd start to feel pretty pinned in back here. Same goes for headroom. I'm just short enough at 6'2" to fit back here comfortably. But there are some nice features in the back seat, including in our tester here, optional heated seats, and we also have a standard household style plug-in point. And then here we've got some pop-out cup holders, which can fit all kinds of sizes of cups. Car seats also really fit back here beautifully. We're going to get to that a little bit more here in a second. But what I've been really impressed about this week is the amount of gear that you can throw into the back of the MKX. It really is quite deceptive. From the outside, it doesn't look like that big of a vehicle, but check it out. I mean, we've had all kinds of configurations in here this week, and for a full-blown road trip with, you know, the crib and the fold-up stroller and all the rest, it's never been an issue. In fact, we've fit 3 full-size Rhodesian Ridgebacks on a trip out to the beach in this, no problem at all. That's over 300 pounds of dog. Pretty remarkable. One thing I'm not so crazy about is this tonneau cover. I mean, it's right in the middle of your trunk, and that's so that the rear seats can recline a little bit and make it a little bit more comfortable in the second row. Personally, I mean, that's right in the middle of your usable cargo space. I would ditch the tonneau cover. It makes it a much more usable trunk. But if you really want to expand out on this trunk, you can press this button right here, and the seats will fit forward, and it does give you a ton of space. One thing I wish there was in the MKX was a 40-20-40 split, so that if you had kids and you wanted to run a set of skis down the middle, you'd be able to do that, but that's not possible here in this vehicle. Now, we've got a rear-facing car seat in place. I've flipped around our car seat for you to show you what this would do for legroom up front. These generally can create a little bit of a problem in vehicles of this size, but not an issue at all. We've got over 11 inches of legroom here, and you can see for me as a tall adult, no problem at all. Still tons of legroom and headroom too. So nice to see that the MKX can gobble up car seats so well. So we've put about 2,000 kilometers on the MKX since I picked it up. That's certainly the most exhaustive road test we've ever done for you here on Family Wheels. And there are a couple of big takeaways for me over that time. First up is that EcoBoost engine. It really does bring this vehicle to life. And yes, it's an option and a fairly expensive option, but here I am on the windy roads of my youth, and I'm having a ball shifting down with these paddle shifters. It never has felt underpowered either. Even on the steepest of highways here in British Columbia, I've always felt like just been cruising along on a flat road. It's quite a remarkable little 2.7 liter turbocharged engine. And then when we look at the size of this vehicle too, it doesn't look that big from the outside, but the interior space is deceptive. You can pack a lot of stuff for a road trip into the MKX. But where I think this vehicle falls short is in its refinement in terms of luxury. When we look at this car compared to the Acura MDX, the Audi Q7, the Mercedes GLE, or the Volvo XC90, you can get into those for about the same price as a fully loaded MKX. And I just don't think that in terms of fit and finish on the inside, that the MKX is quite there. So if all these luxury features aren't top of the list for you, my suggestion, if you're looking at the MKX, would be to also take a close look at the Ford Edge, because they share a lot of the same DNA. They've got the same platform, they have the same cargo capacity, so you can still haul just as much stuff. You can get that EcoBoost engine in the Ford as an optional engine as well, and you'd be putting a lot of money back in your jeans if you went with that Ford option. But I'd love to know what your thoughts are, comparing this this to the European brands and also comparing this to the Ford Edge. Which way would you go if you were looking at these as options for yourself? You can leave a comment below. I'd love to have you subscribe as well while you're at it. You can find me on Twitter @FamilyWheels, and you can also check out the website familywheels.ca for all of our reviews. Thanks so much for joining us here on this road trip. Have a great week.